There you go.
At about the same time that the school was offering jobs to their students, basically causing them to drop out of school. And of course, the reason for this was the war, and they needed the manpower. There just were not enough men to repair cars, but there also wasn't enough to repair televisions, not television, radios. And so I had a friend who got the similar type of offer and accepted it from the a local radio repair station. And his name was J.E. First two initials I don't remember what his actual name was. J.E. Howell, and they took W.E.L.L. was the last name. And we got to be pretty good buddies. We've been good friends in school when we were in school, and when we dropped out, it just continued on. And I'd see him maybe on a Saturday or something. Anyway,
So were you still working as a mechanic at this time?
I was working in a mechanic, as a beginning mechanic. And then ultimately as a more experienced mechanic, and just as he did. Neither one of us had been drafted or going into the service yet, or even really thought about it, although it happened soon enough. But we did have a pretty good time because we both enjoyed what we were learning and what we were doing, and the ability to do things that previously only adults were doing. So anyway, we got to be pretty good friends, and we also made a lot of friends because we could go out in the evening and then stop by and one of the drive-ins. They had a lot of drive-ins, and we'd stop at a drive-in and get a sandwich or something. And of course, the drive-in, the way you got your sandwich was one of the girls in some places would come up on roller skates.
Well, they had them on skates. No, I guess that was what they did then.
And some of them didn't have them on roller skates, but generally they were on roller skates. And they'd come up, so you got to know not only the sandwich, but you also got to know the girls that, and you would pretty soon you'd spot familiar girls and girls that you thought were unusually attractive. And of course, you sit there talking about them and so forth, not really knowing what else to do. Well, see now then, something terrible happened, and we sort of backed off for a while. I've forgotten exactly what it was. There was a car accident. It didn't involve us, but one of the girls got in a bad accident, and it just wasn't something we were used to seeing. And but we still kept doing things together and so forth. We even tried going to a football game, and we didn't care for that. So later on, we tried going to a baseball game. That was better. We liked that better. I don't know why. But at any rate, about this time, we both began to be a little braver in talking to girls. And so we actually made a few friends among them, and it would invite him out. So we would take, he would have a girl and I'd have a girl, both picked from the same takeout place, and we'd go to the movies together. And that was nice. That the girls enjoyed it, we enjoyed it, everybody had a good time. It was very nice. And by this time, both of us had cars, not very good cars, but cars. And so we could go out and take the girls out to the city park, which was a wonderful place to be friendly with a girl, because not only was it a park which was not crowded at night, but this opened up a vista over the bay, just the way it was laid out. So when you sat in your car holding your girl, you could look out over the bay, and if it was a lightning storm, lightning was usually in the summertime. A lot of times the sky would be lit by lightning, and it would flash clear across the whole sky. And it was a show. It was a regular.
Mm-hmm.
It was very spectacular, and so we enjoyed doing that. Um, we did take some trips out of town. Of course, the girls' mothers wouldn't let them go, but they didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And we had to
Some
get them
things
back.
don't change.
Had to get them back by certain times, and so we did a lot of things, going places. But we'd always somewhere along the line we'd sit down and talk to the girls friendly and do a little amateur kissing, that sort of thing. Very nice, very friendly.
So everybody was still living at home at this
Oh yeah,
this
everybody
time?
was still living at home. These were young people.
Yeah.
14, 15, 16 years
Yeah.
old. And so one time, J.E. and I decided we wanted to make a long trip. He had a car that he could borrow from Allie, who incidentally was my dad's partner in a radio shop business,
Oh,
which
okay.
there was another tie there. And he was willing to loan him his car for a trip. And where we wanted to go was a little longer trip down the coast to Hatteras,
Mm-hmm.
where they put on shows, recreations of the Indian stories and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
They were just like a theater,
Mm-hmm.
and actually some of them were very good. So we both went and talked to the parents of these favorite girls, and they gave us permission to do it. Stupid, but anyway, they did. So we had a real good time going down there. This was a long trip. Now this was J.E.'s car, so J.E. was driving, which seemed like a wonderful thing for him to do, except that it put me in the back seat with my girl, and he had to sit in the front seat driving the car with his girl, and obviously
He was distracted.
yeah, the distractions were quite different. So we finally got back, and he was not real happy because he could look in his rearview mirror, and he couldn't enjoy himself in the same way I was.
Yeah.
And so he said, "I'm never going to do that again." You know, typical young boys talking foolish to each other.
Yep.
But we had a good time. And so later on, when we got the war was getting bigger now and more dangerous, and they were starting to draft more and more people. And pretty soon it was obvious that we were going to get called. And the funny thing about it was, we both got called on the same day at the same time at the same office. So not planned, couldn't do anything about it anyway. But we both got, and we ended up. This was in Portsmouth, Virginia, and we ended up at a bus that they provided, the military provided, or somebody provided, and we were all headed toward Richmond for initial inspection to see if you were fit to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so we lost track of each other during this. Once you're into this, this was the only bus going. There was buses and buses and buses. And the first thing you knew, you couldn't see J.E. Howell anymore, and he couldn't see me,
Mm-hmm.
and we were totally lost. But this went on, and it took the better part of a day and way into the next day before we could get off the bus in Richmond. And then we had to have the test exams, the physical exams, and we were ready to go. And it ended up at wherever the bus was taking us for a not basic training, but check-in to provide the uniforms, checking you. And we got checked again at Aberdeen, and we didn't know where in the hell that was. Aberdeen Proving Ground, never heard of it. And I didn't know, of course, I didn't see him for a long time. He came in was brought in on a different bus. About 4 o'clock in the morning, I got checked in, didn't see him.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next day, after we got our uniforms and things and our shoes and things, we got on another bus, this one was going to Aberdeen, and so I did see him, and he was going to Aberdeen, and he was going to go into radio electronic systems for the Army, and I was going in for the tank retrieval. So we both headed to the same place with completely different assignments. And at first we hardly ever saw each other. And then this was only lasted about a week. And then I got called up to the little donkey room where everything was being done to get us checked out and signed in. And I was told I was to go out and drive a tank, learn how to drive a tank. And so, first time I sat down in a tank, it was like sitting down in a farm tractor. I said, hell, I know how to drive this thing already. And sure enough,
it drove like a farm
it
tractor.
just drove like a farm tractor. It was no trouble at all. You just pull the thing back and it was, except the only problem was this wasn't going to be any joyride.
No.
This particular assignment was going to be for Korea. And that was about where the war was. This time the European war had stopped and been picked up into the Korean War.
So this was not a plum assignment.
No.
By any means.
No, it was an active combat assignment.
Yeah.
And we were going to get training for combat. It was going to last all of 6 weeks. And then we'd be gone. Fully trained soldiers. So you can know how that went.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
And I got called up very soon, just almost as soon as I'd driven the tank and demonstrated I could drive it. I got called up to the office and said, "You're going to school." Didn't tell me what for. I said, "I have drove it, I drove it fine. I didn't need any more training. It's not in tanks." And then I ended up for 6 weeks, I should say, of intensive electronics training. Now,
I wonder how they qualified you for that or got you in that class, or somebody put in a
when
word
I put
for
down the things I've done, I put down that I had worked in a radio repair shop, and I had on Saturday mornings, just to make a little extra money, and also put down that I repaired automobiles.
Yeah,
training
so
to
you obviously had an aptitude for repairing things.
Yeah, so I had both of the.
Thank goodness.
And they decided they needed me more for the electronics than they did for the tanks. And just by chance. Didn't see J.E. Howell. Didn't have any idea what happened to him. I later on found that he had been called to the desert location, which nobody much had heard of, and didn't know what was going to happen. I just heard by word of mouth that he'd gone there, and never heard from him. Didn't know what was going to happen to him. Turned out he made it just fine. He survived the training, the experiments at the atomic bomb. Didn't get injured. Got out fine. But I never saw him. And even after we both got out, we were in such different worlds that, and it took 2 years to get out, of course. And I went back to,
Did you go back? I don't think at that point we haven't gotten to this part of the story. I don't know.
I was stayed at Aberdeen
Yeah.
to train because it took over 6 weeks to train for electronics. These are supposed to be experienced electronics people to bring them up to date so they could work on the needed, whatever was needed. Nobody knew what it was.
But you never ended going back to Portsmouth after that.
Never
did you?
going back to Portsmouth. No.
Yeah. Now your mother was still down in Portsmouth.
My
and your
mother was
sister.
still in Portsmouth, and I did get the chance to when we changed general assignments, we'd get a few days off, and I could take it to wherever. You could go anywhere you wanted to.
Yeah.
A lot of people went into Baltimore and had a good time.
I bet, yeah, it's very nearby.
Yeah, very nearby, and they had a burlesque house and all that other stuff. I did go down there once or twice, but I didn't live down there. And that was about that. And then, of course, after that came a whole
New era.
new area of working.
Well, we'll start on that.
But the other thing, one other thing I will say about this, now, we had a captain that at the very end that we were assigned to report to a captain. We were supposed to be 14 men. Turned out we only had 7. And we did later on pick up the others. But we were introduced to him, you know, when a typical army building, you know, nothing fancy, just a big building. And he was a fairly short guy, which surprised me, and a captain, but he was. A little bit on the chubby side, very jovial, extremely pleasant, but he said, "Don't get any false ideas. I'll kick you in the ass as quick as look at you." You know, that type of thing. But we all took a liking to him almost immediately. And then the thing happened that nobody could explain. He said, "No, you didn't really have much electronics training, did you?" Pointing to me. I said, "No, well, I had some, and I've got some here." He said, "But you didn't really have any electronics training." I said, "Well, I was training in automobile repair." He said, "You'll be our first sergeant." Just now, the first sergeant is, if you may or may not know,
Gives orders.
He's the king. He's the king. He's directly under the captain, and runs the whole show. Usually, it's a 200-man organization, you know. So here I was, a first sergeant, and I said, "Well, can I wear what do I wear on my sleeve? Do I have a first sergeant thing? This is 3 stripes up, 3 stripes down, and a diamond in the middle." He said, "Yeah, you can wear that if you want to." He said, "My recommendation is just wear it on a holiday or something." But he didn't even wear his. So I got to know and he stayed the captain for the whole time, and he was adored by his people, but all of us really.
Well, let me stop the story there, because this is a good place to take a break. Just a second.